Folks, our goal today is to generate awareness and interest in the best practices and innovative approaches, and that I hope it might help you in your work community and back in your school communities. I encourage you to ask questions, and I challenge you to take away at least one good idea to share with your fellow board members and staff back home. I would also like to welcome our first general session speaker to the stage, Ms. Shelley Loving-Ryder, Assistant Superintendent of Student Assessment and School Improvement with the Virginia Department of Education. Mrs. Loving-Ryder oversees the Division of Student Assessment and School Improvement, which manages test development, administration, scoring, and reporting of statewide assessment results. The division also promotes increased student learning and achievement by assisting schools and school divisions in the implementation of effective instructional strategies and best practices. Shelley, thanks for coming with us today.
Good morning. Before I begin, I wanted to let you know that Dr. Staples will be joining us later. At the same time this meeting is occurring, we are also having our employee recognition meeting at the department. So he is back at the department recognizing various staff members for years of service. But he will be joining us later in addition to some other staff members. Today, I want to give you a brief bit of information about some research we have been conducting at the department in conjunction with Plus Alpha Research and Consulting. And while the title of this presentation looks a little scary, it really is an effort to identify schools that serve similar populations. Really, the idea behind this is to further the conversation you'll begin today by helping you to know what other schools serve similar students to those that you serve. When you think about how we usually sort schools for training and for work, we usually provide training either by geographic region, or sometimes we assign training to you depending on how a school is identified, often for federal accountability, such as we provide training for priority or focus schools, or training for schools that are accredited with warning. As we've worked with schools over time, we often are asked, can you tell me what schools serve students like I do, and particularly which schools who serve students like I do are successful? So really that question was the impetus for this research. Now, as we all know, education is very complex, and school improvement is very complex. We of course have the student inputs, the demographic information, and then we really have the black box in the middle where we're providing education for our students. Instructional techniques, as we've heard this morning, the number of effective teachers and staff and the leadership within the school is very important to school success. And then of course we have the student outcomes. Most frequently we think about student test scores, but there's also post-secondary education, employability, all of those outcomes that we expect students to have when they leave education. Often now we look at the outcomes, and then we try to figure out what's going on inside of the black box and to adjust what's occurring to improve student outcomes. And really the research that we have today looks at this in a slightly different way. Forming statistical peer groups really serves to connect the inputs, the student demographics, with the outcomes, so that we're then sorting schools into groups based on similar demographics. And that really can enable a couple of things. Perhaps most importantly, it would enable the establishment of professional groups, learning communities, where you might find schools that have similar demographics and work with them to address some of the challenges or identify best practices in some of those schools. It really matches kids to kids, so you've got the similar demographics to establish those groups. This has been done in a number of different states already. I'm not aware that it's been used to establish all-star teams with the Dallas Cowboys or the Redskins, but it has been used to establish peer groups in a number of other states. And the characteristics that are usually used to sort schools are the financial inputs, school and teacher characteristics, and then of course the student demographics. So as we did this research in Virginia, these are the inputs we used to establish the peer groups. In terms of school characteristics, we looked at whether the school is an elementary, middle, or high school, and then whether it's a small, medium, or large school. We also looked at the student demographics. We looked at the percent of students by ethnicity and race. Also looked at the percent of students with disabilities, English language learners, and then as we've already heard this morning, looking at the percent of students who are eligible for free and reduced price lunch as a proxy for poverty. And then lastly, we also looked at financial information, the division's ability to pay, and then also the per capita income. So these are the characteristics that were used to statistically establish the peer groups. Now this is still a work in progress, but we wanted to let you know it is something we're working on. And as we have thought about how we might be able to use these groups, this is what we've come up with so far. This information could be used to develop communities of learners who serve similar student populations. You might have professional learning communities, and it might also be possible that at some point down the road we could target the professional development or the technical assistance we provide to you based on similar characteristics. And then secondly, looking at schools where there are promising practices, very much like what you'll be hearing today from various schools. This might allow us to identify promising practices in schools who have particular characteristics and then share those with schools who have the same characteristics. Now that was a very short presentation, but because this is a work in progress, I wanted to use the remainder of the time to get your thoughts about what we might do with this information, how we might disseminate it, and are there other ways that the information might be used. We want to make it very clear that the idea behind establishing the peer groups is for you to have an opportunity to talk with other school leaders who serve students similar to those you serve. It's not for accountability. The purpose is to be able to establish opportunities for you to talk to other people and share ideas.
I think one of the things we need to do is help develop teachers coming out of our pre-service programs and that are going into your schools to work with children in poverty and children in the challenging programs. So I think this is one way to start. I think we need to be included in the K-12 process, make it K-20, and I think this is a good place to start. So I think that's one way we could use the data.
Thank you, that's very helpful. So to use some of perhaps the best practices we identify to inform teacher preparation programs. Is there someone else?
I'm Scott Braybrand from Lynchburg City. I want you to know Dr. Staples talked to the superintendents about this back in the fall, and honestly, we had our joint meeting with City Council and School Board about a month or two ago. We went ahead and did our own analysis. We took several school divisions of our similar size. We actually went from low poverty divisions up to high poverty and sort of did a line of best fit with SOL scores. And the overall trend is the SO scores are slightly down as more poverty increases in school systems. We showed the data. We showed a Roanoke City, who I know is here today, outperforming Lynchburg City on that line of best fit. Instead of a meeting where suddenly the city council and school board started attacking, it was actually our strongest meeting ever because they appreciated the transparency of the data. Where are we, and what are we doing to find out about how we can get better from other systems? So I think it's the biggest thing is making sure the context of why we're doing this at the state level and what it's about. It's about getting better. It's not about pointing fingers. I actually found it to have more support afterward after we did it. And the only thing I would say is it's good for schools that have been struggling, but it's also good for schools even when we looked at the line of best fit at lower poverty divisions, because we broke it out by our two largest groups, white and African American students. Some of the low poverty districts outperformed for targeted groups of kids, and some, in a sense, underperformed. So it's a good idea, frankly, across all schools, whether they're in challenging environments or not. Thank you.
Dr. Brabrand, do you have thoughts about how we might best disseminate?
Honestly, I think one of the things you have your, the VSBA has the Governor's Conference on Education, or the VSBA summer thing where we bring folks statewide, superintendents come. Maybe somewhere we have the table discussion, somewhere where we can disseminate it instead of the information just going out raw. There's a chance that day to then, the day you announce it, that folks are already together to start talking and being able to be grouped by areas and talk about, wow, what did you do? And so that it's done in sort of a unified fashion. That's my initial thoughts.
Thank you. That's very helpful. I think we want to make sure that we roll this out in a way that the context is clear and so that it will be helpful, not harmful to you. Other thoughts? This is very helpful to us because we have really struggled about how to disseminate.
Hi, Sue Magliero, Virginia Tech. And the one thing that struck me is that how this can be useful for finding external money. If you've got groups, foundations, grants, et cetera, are more likely to fund consortia. And so once you have that kind of framework for knowing who your peer groups are, I think that it helps facilitate that, that opportunity.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Good morning. I'm Jim Baldwin. I'm with the Elementary Principals Association. A little louder. My apologies to Ben, but I believe that this is probably something that should be disseminated through superintendents. The administrators in the schools sometimes have no clue within their division who is a peer, but sometimes even within a division, there is no peer. So it might be well that the superintendents see this and disseminate it within their division and share with their principals who else is similar. And what my concerns is that what do we do about the outliers? In some of our divisions, even the most affluent in the state, there are outlier schools that are so different than anything that exists within the division, there is no peer, possibly even in the state. I'm familiar with some schools that have had to go as far away as Texas to find someone that is even remotely similar to the demographics and the population of that school. So take a hard look at the outliers and make sure they don't fall through the cracks.
Thank you. I think one powerful aspect of this research is that it does look across the state. And so there may very well be situations where there's a school within a division and there are no peer schools within that division, but often there will be another school with similar characteristics in another division.
Good morning. I'm from Brunswick County High School. I'm the principal at Brunswick County High School. One of the things that we noticed that a lot of people that are similar, or a lot of school divisions that are similar in the student performance and demographics and things like that may be far apart from each other, and sometimes it's hard to get together. But one of the things they could do is that everybody that's very similar has similar results, similar demographics, you know, things like socioeconomic levels. We always look at trying to use technology to the best fit and also for the most efficiency, most bang for your buck. So you could formulate, get the school systems together and find out which ones similar have some great things going on in different areas. Look at who the teachers are. Go in, look at things like lesson plans, look at the best teaching practice they're using, and almost form like your own Khan Academy of different lessons and things like that. And you could form a library, and you could share it across the state. That way, you could still save money, resources, not much travel, and then you wouldn't have to use as many things. That's the most efficient way, because we had the technology, pretty much everybody has their type, use it to its best purpose.
Thank you. That's very helpful. I think it is a wonderful idea to use technology to be able to share.
Lily Jesse, and I'm from Prince William County. And I want to just piggyback on the idea of technology. As I've gone to national workshops like Education Trust, the thing that I've noticed that because Virginia's we're not engaged in the Common Core, a lot of materials and lesson plans are Common Core driven. And when I go into chat rooms, I find that there's this national collaboration that's taken place. And because we're not part of that Common Core, I think we're going to have to intensify our efforts to provide professional development statewide. And so I think webinars where there are chat rooms and not just principals, because I was a principal, and I find that sometimes as a principal, people really don't listen to you because you are the principal, but they do listen to their peers. And so I think chat rooms and webinars where teachers who are engaging in best practices can share. In Prince William, we just started a project where we're showing best practices in the boardroom, because I'm on a school board. I was very instructionally driven, and I find on school boards we rarely talk about student learning. So I think that student learning has to be brought into the boardroom. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Jack McKinley, Amelia County. My biggest concern is I want to make sure that as soon as the information is available that it can be readily shared. And I'm interested in seeing what our similarities are in terms of demographic results, but then also I'm sure, as it's been discussed, who has similar demographics with higher results, who has similar demographics with lower results. I think it would be nice if there was a feature where we are grouped automatically, and so we know who our peers are, but then we need access to all of the information so that we can look at a variety of other factors and look at situations for perhaps school systems or schools that are larger or smaller than us, and become aware of every factor, every component that they're doing, because it's not just a straight comparison in terms of demographics, but really sharing best practices among all the school divisions.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, Linda Revia from Stanton City. I think the information would be well received across the state for us to receive this, but what I would say is that oftentimes many of us are recipients of data. When you just get this data plopped upon you, what do you do with it? And I know we've spent a tremendous amount of time working with our teachers about how to chunk data in a meaningful fashion. So what I would say is that if there's a way to provide the information, but also have some undergirding ideas of plans for going forward for how to allow these opportunities for our staff to work together, to contact one another. I think that aligns much with the task force idea of an extended contract for teachers and other staff members in these challenged schools, because I don't want the data to just come out and sit, and then people are once again trying to operate in isolation. I think the idea is to try to build collaboration, and I think what would foster that would be some kind of structure ahead of time, whether you invited some of the superintendents and school board members or other staff to say what might be some, at least some initial tenets of a structure, and if we were to get that information early enough that we could do meaningful work either late this spring or in the summer, as opposed to if we get it in August. I mean, we start school in August, so when we get things that come out from the State Department or the General Assembly, we've got to implement them. We're already underway, and that's very difficult, so I'd ask for timeliness again.
Thank you very much. This has been very helpful. It sounds like from your comments that we need to make sure that we roll this information out, perhaps at a conference where everyone can hear the purpose of it rather than just providing the information to you. I think there have been great ideas about how we might be able to facilitate sharing through the use of technology and through the identification of teachers who might be able to share in that way. So I thank you all very much. Are there questions before I leave? I really do appreciate your input. This has been very helpful. Thank you.